gonna get started. So first off, thank you for coming to JCON. It's been what, 3 days already, and we're almost at the end of the event, unless you're coming here tomorrow for the workshops. So I hope you have had a good time. The session of today is, well, the title is Releasing Fast, Easy, and Consistently. And the idea is to talk about a project, a tool that can help you do releases if that happens to be one of your tasks currently at work. And if it's not, and if you're trying to get into DevOps, someone is telling you, oh, you should go into DevOps, let's do shift left, let's do all those other things that all the people are talking about, doing releases is one of those things, one of those tasks that needs to happen at some point. Okay, so my name is Andres Almiray. I'm coming from Mexico, currently living in Switzerland. And one of the things that I like to do is just travel around the world and have conversations with people like yourselves, talk about all those different experiences that we have gathered through working in open source and commercial source and closed source and all those kind of things. Okay, so that's everything that I want to say about myself. I'm going to talk about today about a tool for which I am one of the main authors, which is called jährlich. It's an open source project that helps you do certain tasks. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that, of what prompted myself and other people to create this project, so that we can understand what the tool can do eventually for the work you're doing. Oh, perfect. We got a screen. Nice. Thank you. So I was already in that slide so far. The why. Back in, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, I started a project called Iconly, which is a set of icons that you can use on a desktop application, whether it's Swing, a JavaFX, or something else. So at the beginning, it was fine. It's just regular Java libraries. At some point, the application started, well, the project grew so large that I wanted to create an app, or I need an application where you could use to browse the different icons to see how those icons would look like in case that you wanted to apply them to a particular application. So that meant writing a desktop app. Not really a hard problem. The next problem is, once you have it, you have to put it into the hands of the consumers. And this is where I myself stumbled a lot, because it's easy to build, not so easy to release it so that people can consume it. As a regular Java developer, I would say it's very convenient for myself to say, hey, here's the Git repository for that particular project. You need this version of Java, that version of Maven or Gradle or what have you, and these other environmental variables. Follow these build instructions, maybe Docker, whatever, and perhaps you're going to get a binary that you can run and test yourself. Well, that is not very user-friendly, is it? It will be much, much easier if I'll simply say to you, go to that particular URL and download the binary. It's already ready-made for you, done. Oh, you don't want to use an URL? You prefer to install things using Homebrew or Winged or another package manager? I got you covered. So just go there, install JReleaser or install the application, boom, you're done. That's the whole point. Now, I didn't know exactly how to make this happen. I know how my way around Java, around my IDE, my build tools. I have no clue about package managers. I have no clue about the different formats and JSON, YAML, all these little manifests and additional files in order to make the package managers work. So, what else did I need to do? Not just package the application, but also create documentation or release notes, stuff that is somehow related to the source, that can be inferred from the source, but it is also helpful for users. I didn't have a right answer for this, so I put a pause on that one, and I move on into 2 other projects that help as an inspiration. The one on your left is Go Releaser. This works for Go projects. If you have ever worked with the Golang language and you are creating binaries or libraries and you want to create releases, that is the tool you want to use, because this is the one that started it all. This one hooks into the build tool chain and can create a tag, can create a Git release, can announce projects, can do a packager for packagement for package managers, a few other things, right? But it only does it for Go. And just like yourselves, I'm a Java developer. I want this for Java. So almost at the same time, I discovered this other project called JBank, and I have the creator is one of my friends, Max Anderson, and he had the same issue. That is, he created a command line tool in Java, and he wants everyone to be able to use this command line tool, but it's not enough to simply say go to that or clone deploy everything that I said before. He just wants you to simply use JBank as it is as quickly as possible. So he created a lot of stuff, a lot of rules in bash scripts and in Gradle scripts and other things, just to be sure that that command line tool was easily consumable by many different package managers. So one day he and I were talking, and after he did a lot of things for JBank, and I said, hey, I have my own command line tool written in Go. It's a different thing. And I use Go Releaser. It's a simple YAML file, and I get all these benefits, whereas you had to do all the things manually. So it dawned on us, what if there was a version of Go Releaser that worked for Java? What if that particular tool will also follow all the lessons learned by JBank so that other Java projects could benefit from that? And that is when this tool, JReleaser, came to be. So that's the name. We didn't want to put a Java releaser, just JReleaser. And it's an open source project. The website is jreleaser.org. The code is hosted on GitHub. Everybody can contribute if you want to contribute. So what it is? Basically, you start with your current build tool, whichever it may be. Maven, Gradle, Ant, if we're talking about Java. But later, JReleaser, by the way that it's implemented, it's also capable of working with non-Java projects. So if you are interested in Rust or working in Rust, or C or C++, Perl, Haskell, C#, even JavaScript, all those things will work with JReleaser. Because the tool does not build, the tool only releases. So you keep using your current build tool of choice, whichever it may be, to create the artifacts that are releasable, and then you use the release tool to release said artifacts. So based on that, you produce binaries, you have a project, you supply JReleaser the tool with some metadata file with additional information about your project, and then what the tool can do is create a Git release on GitHub, on GitLab, or Gitya for the moment. It can also package the binaries, if you have them, for Homebrew, Snapcraft on Linux, or Winget on Windows, Scoop, others, even JBank. And finally, if you want to, you can also tell the world that the new release is ready. So you can put it on Twitter, on Mastodon, on Slack, on Zulip. You can even send an email. There are many things that you can do in order to announce a project. And many of these tasks that can be performed during a release are optional. You only configure what you actually need. So how does it do it? If you were to look into Go Releaser, there is only one command line tool, which is called Go Releaser build. Later, it expanded into different commands, and that is for the paid version. So Go Releaser has a paid version, but JReleaser doesn't. Everything is free. And what we do is that if you want to do everything that I just described, release, package, and announce, then you invoke the orange command at the top, full release. If you only care about creating a Git release, which means generating release notes and grabbing all those artifacts that may be needed as release assets, tag the release and publish that into a release page, then you use the blue column. If you only care about packaging, that is creating a Docker image or creating a Winget package or a Scoop manifest or a Homebrew formula, there's the column in the middle. And if you only care about announcing to tweeting, Mastodon, email, what have you, then you use the green column. Now, there are two additional things that JReleaser can do, which are kind of like a gray area within a release tool and a build tool, because Maven and Gradle can do these things, which are these two boxes in black. One is download, which simply says you configure some sort of HTTP server or FTP, SFTP, or even SCP to download files or assets that may be required for releasing. So in case that you have some common things that all projects that you have may require. And the last one is assemble. This is the one that creates what we call distributions. These are archives like zips or tar files that contain a set of files in a given structure. So that given structure for most times is, say, a Java binary distribution is a top-level directory that may have a README or a license, and it has a bin directory where there's a launcher or an executable, and it has a lib directory with all the jars, and maybe it has etc or config for any other additional configuration files, right? So you can invoke any of these commands independent from one another if you want to, or if you want the whole behavior, just invoke full release. All right. We have a bunch of integration. As a matter of fact, this is not the full list. We have added more info since we had this slide. So once again, if you want to release to a Git service, we have the three main ones: GitHub, GitLab, and Gitya, for which you run your own instance. Codeberg is based on Gitya. We also support generic Git. That means if you're hosting on Amazon or Azure or Bitbucket, you can use that for the time being. Now, those integrations for generic Git do not create a Git release page. Only GitHub, GitLab, and Gitya at the moment. If you want to upload binaries, well, we support uploading to the Git release page that is native to that release. So GitLab, Gitya, and GitHub. Or you can also upload to JAVAPRO Artifactory, which is quite common. Or you can also upload to Nexus. I didn't put it there. Or a regular HTTP server, just a put or a post is enough. Or you can also publish it to Amazon S3 or any other cloud provider that offers an Amazon S3 compatibility API. Or just SCP, SFTP, or FTP to anywhere you want to. In terms of package managers, we have Homebrew for Mac and Linux, Chocolatey for Windows. We can create Docker images as well. JBank, MacPorts for Windows, Scoop for Windows, MacPorts for Mac. SDKman works for all platforms. Snap for Linux, Spec is RPM. We also have Flatpak for Linux, AppImage for Linux, and we create Docker images using Jib as well in the latest version. And in case of announcements, I already mentioned a few. Here are a few others. The latest one that was added in the release that is going to come next week, by the way, 170, Blue Sky, which is kind of like follow-up to Twitter. There are a few others as well. Okay. In terms of inputs, these are the things that you supply to the tool. Well, if you happen to have binaries, because that's not a hard requirement, but if you do, then you will supply distributions of these types. It could be a Java distribution, which is a zip or a tar file that contains a file structure as I described before. Or it could be just a single jar, whether it's an Uber jar, it's executable, it doesn't matter, it's just an executable jar. It could also be a JLink distribution, that is your production code, which may be just one jar or multiple jars, bundled with a Java runtime created with JLink. GraalVM native images, so you can create native executables for a series of platforms. We can release those as well. And what is called as a native package, these are platform installers created using JPackage. So JPackage also requires JLink, so you might reuse a JLink distribution, or you can use it from external. And this will allow you to create RPMs and devs for Linux, DMG and PackagE for Mac, or MSI or XE for Windows. All these are installers. And there's one more that I didn't input here, which is, remember that I mentioned that you could also use C# or C++ or other non-Java languages. Well, obviously, these languages will create native executables for the given platform that you're compiling to. Those can be released as well using either the binary distribution, so it doesn't have to be Java, or if you don't package that in a zip file, you just want to release the plain binary and nothing more, we have another type of distribution called flat binary, which allows you to do this. So there are many choices depending on what you want to do. We're not forcing you to go just with one one only path. How do you launch the tool? Well, no. So the easiest way is that you need a version of Java 11 as a minimum, and then use that particular script, get_releaser.java, to download a particular version of JReleaser. You can give it a version, or you can just expect whatever latest version it is, and then just run it. I mean, yes, but if JReleaser is a command line tool, wouldn't it make, and it's written in Java, would it make sense for JReleaser to release itself? And would it make sense to also publish the tool to different package managers, right? That was the whole reason for this tool to exist in the to begin with, even though it was JavaFX the origin. Well, it so happens that JReleaser uses JReleaser to release itself since the first release, since we started publishing early access releases. So what you saw earlier is the simplest way, but it's not the only way. If you're on Mac, then you can use all these different versions, Homebrew and Mac ports and SDK man. If you're on Windows now, you can use Winget as well. You're on Linux, you can use Flatpak or AddImage and Snapcraft and a few others. So there's plenty of ways for you to download a command line tool and use it. But if you don't want to use it in that way, or you want to use Docker images, then we provide two different flavors. One is called Slim, as well as Alpine. Why? One is based on Ubuntu, and I think at the time it didn't have all the requirements to perform all the behaviors. Now it does. And the other one is based on Alpine Linux. Yeah, so plenty of options, and that's just a command line tool. But there are more options to run the tool. So if you want to, you can run it as a Maven plugin, or as a Gradle plugin, or as a set of end tasks. Because yes, even if it is 2023, even if it's the middle of the year, there are still people that require to use end. So we support them as well. You can run this on a local environment. You can run it on any computer you want to, but you can also run it on CI, on any CI server. We have explicit guides for all these different CI solutions. We have a GitHub action that knows how to run it on GitHub, and we just recently, we have a contributor in South Korea that added an Azure extension to the marketplace to run JReleaser as an Azure extension, basically. Okay. So I guess now it's time for the demo to see if this is going to work. All right, let's get out of this. And here is the terminal. Let's make it bigger. That's good. Let's close this one. And now let's show this. This is just a regular Java-based application. It's a command line tool. You run it and it prints out hello world, right? I built it with Maven. And if you look at the commits, just regular comments, you notice that some of those comments follow a particular formatting convention. You can pick your own convention. This so happens to match with a specific commit convention called conventional commits. And that will come in handy later. Okay, so I have checked out this project. It's available here. And I have not built anything. The other thing that I want to showcase when we go back here to the repository is that there are no tags and there are no releases on this side. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is check which version of JReleaser I have, if I already have something installed. That is through SDK man. I like to use SDK man. So I'm going to list versions of JReleaser that I have access to. And I have all those. The currently installed is 1.6.0, and yes, I was working in two different snapshot versions locally. Okay, so now that I know that, I can say JReleaser-v, and that will tell me that indeed I'm using JReleaser 1.6.0. Perfect. So far, so good. All right. So remember that now there is nothing here. I mean, there's no binaries, it's just my project. What if I just wanted to create a Git release that contains release notes based on the commit messages and nothing more? Well, I can do this. I can say release, and we can ask for all the options that we have access to. So there's plenty of them, right? But the one that I'm most interested in is this one called autoconfig options for now. When I turn on this feature, then I will have JLister infer metadata about my project based on the Git commit directory and its metadata and environment variables and a few other things. So I'm going to use this one, autoconfig, and I'm also going to use the project version, this one here, just to tell it that I want to use a given number, right? So that means I'm going to do JLister release autoconfig and project version equals 100, because why not? Okay, we do this, and this is the basic output from JLister, and it tells a few things. At the beginning, it tells us which version of the tool we're using, what autoconfig properties have been explicitly configured, so project version there. It shows us a few things. Yeah, you want to do validate, and what is the current SHA of your project is here. What's the current timestamp? You're working on Mac, okay? You're doing things for real, so dry run is set to false, okay? Calculates the changelog, and then performs some features by default, but because we did not configure anything more, everything else is disabled. At some point, it says, releasing to that particular URL with that branch, the main branch, all right? So we go back here. I'm going to do refresh, and notice that now there is one tag up there, and there is a release 1 minute ago. So I click that, and this is what I have. Yay! You get all the commit messages. Well, it doesn't look very nice. At least I got all the commit messages. Can I do better? Yes, I can. If I look into all the properties that I can set here, this one that says changelog formatted. Okay, let's try that one. Changelog formatted. But if I click enter here, it's gonna fail. Does anybody have a clue why a release might fail? Yes. Because I already released 100. Okay, let's see. Boom. Release 100 already exists. What can we do? We can override it. We can manually drop the release, or we could just release 101 or change the tag, right? In this case, we're going to override, and we have an option for that. And notice that every time that we add in new properties, it's telling us what we're doing. Good. This time it worked. Okay. We do a refresh. It looks a little bit better. Now at least we got everything in a row, and we have no clue about the prefixes yet, but at least it found the author of each commit, and it will list every single one of the authors in the case it was only me. Okay, it starts to look a bit better. What else can we do? We can build this thing, right? So let's build it. Let's invoke Maven. Did you notice what command line I used to build this thing? This is my Go command line tool that I was talking about earlier. And this tool invokes either the Maven wrapper or the Gradle wrapper. It will detect which build tool you're using in your project and do the right thing for you. In this case, it detected this Maven project, so it will invoke the Maven wrapper. Off you go. So I got the binaries, these ones, a tar.gc and a zip file. Let's add them to the release. That means adding two files like this. That's in the target, distributions, app, the zip, and the file, target, distributions, app tar.gc. Because we're using overwrite, then it should do more stuff now. Notice that now calculates the checksums. I did not configure any signatures yet. And during the upload, I have two additional files here as release assets, and it also uploads all the checksums. I could do everything in just one file, or I could do each checksum individually. The release notes still look a little bit odd, but when we look here now, we got three additional assets, the two binaries and the checksums. All right. You might be wondering one thing. I'm doing this in a local environment, and I'm pushing things to GitHub. At some point, I need to tell GitHub who I am and my credentials to do this. Well, those credentials, you could set them directly on the command line, and if that were to be the case, you would know my secrets. I don't want you to see my secrets. But if you look here into the text here, it loads variables from a given configuration file, for which there are different formats. I chose TOML just because it allows me to have multi-line values in a much easier way than rather than using YAML, JSON, or properties. And it's in this file that I have my GitHub token configured. And this in this file that you could put additional secrets, or you could put them in environmental variables. Jährlich will eventually find it. As we continue to grow in our command line tool, we could add more features to more files and more settings, but that starts to get complicated. This is the moment that we will start to see the metadata file. So instead of invoking this, let's look into that JReleaser file that's here. There's some common information about the application here, or my project, so a name, a description, some links, a license, when the project was started, a group ID, artifact ID. All these things come into play later when you have more package managers or you want to deploy to different places. This is where we can reuse this common information. Then we're also going to tell to the changelog generator that we want to have additional settings. So we're going to release to GitHub. We're going to overwrite. We're also going to sign the commits. We're going to also post an announcement or a discussion whenever we post a release. And in case of the changelog, we want this to be the format for each one of the rows. But as a matter of fact, I'm going to comment this out for now, because I want to follow the conventional commits presets, just because that happens to match whatever I use in my commit messages. And this is the format that I want to use whenever I want to present what is the information about a contributor. If you have not seen this before, these are mustache templates. So those of you that are working on a front end, you probably have seen this. So we use mustache templates as a way to define variables in a way. We're going to sign all the artifacts. We're going to create a homebrew formula for this particular application. And these are the two distributions that we're going to send. So there's the zip file. So maybe if I make it a bit smaller. There's the zip file and the tar.gc file. You could use just a explicit value like this, app. But if you use these placeholders, these mustache templates, then your configuration becomes more flexible, because you could supply these values, project version and distribution name, from the outside. Okay, so now that we have this, I can invoke JReleaser and let's do a full release again. First, before I do this, I'm going to drop this release. Does it make sense to drop it? No, it's okay. I'm going to keep it. It's the same tag. I'm going to do JReleaser full release, and it's going to fail. Not because it already exists, but because I missed setting one variable. And JReleaser will tell me, hey, nice of you to try to use a tool, but you're missing something. I don't know what version number you want to release. So you could put it in the configuration file, you can put it in an environmental variable, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And that's what it suggests you. So we do export that version, and now invoke the same command as before, and let's see what happens. It's no longer in auto configuration mode, and let's see that it's doing the checksum, it's doing the signing, doesn't deploy anything to Maven Central, doesn't upload anything to Amazon S3. There's a bunch of additional assets, so not just the binaries but also the signatures, so that's good. And then prepares the app distribution for packaging. I only configure Homebrew, but if I wanted to configure more packager managers, it will do the right thing here. So, and there's no announcement yet in this case. So when I do here a refresh, that's how my release notes now look like. Just because I'm following the conventional commits presets. You can change these features or these icons to do something else if you want to. Notice that the prefix is also gone. And here's how the contributors get listed. There are the different signature files that were also added. But we also publish a Homebrew formula, right? So we go here into Homebrew tab, which is the default directory, the default repository. And it was just, something was published just 1 minute ago. This Homebrew formula. Which so happens to go into, if I look into this URL, it matches what I find here. And this checksum matches one of the entries found in this file. So it just works. And you could grow this. If you're using GitHub, I just show how it works. But if you're using GitLab or the other releases, then it will work pretty much in the same way. Last bit. There's supposed to be here, join discussion. We click that button, and there is a discussion topic on the discussions tab that matches that particular release. So now someone can react to it or add a comment to that particular release. And that's pretty much it. That's basically what the tool does. Okay, let's go back here. Thanks. But wait, there's more. So I already told you that JReleaser releases itself. We started working with the tool in November of 2020. And since we started before the first release 0.10, we used the tool to release it itself. So that way, we can catch early on if we have broken something or we added a feature or we added a bug without knowing, and so we fix it. So we definitely have test cases in our project, but we're live testing the next version of JReleaser with the previous version of JReleaser. All right. Well, JReleaser 1.0.0 was released April 10 of last year, and here's one particular anecdote that I have to say about JReleaser at that time. This was on a Sunday. April 10 was on a Sunday, and I know for a fact because that Sunday in that day I had to travel to DevNexus Atlanta in the US. So I had a lot of things to do on that Sunday. It was a very stressful day because international flights and this and packs and whatnot. I woke up early in the morning. At 7 in the morning, I just clicked a button, said release. And that, after 1 hour of doing a lot of things, I had JReleaser 1.0.0 already out in production with announcements, all package managers. That meant releasing 1.0.0 of JReleaser was the least stressful task that I had to do on that long day. Because one of the things that I like to say about JReleaser is a tool that really, really gets me going. I had a lot of passion about this. But what I want about releases is to make them as exciting as watching paint dry. Releases should be boring. It should be reproducible, should be reliable. You say, I want to release, and forget about it, and be sure that this thing works. So trust me, if I can do a release at 7 in the morning on a Sunday, you can do a release on a Friday, and then just have a good time in the afternoon without having to worry if the thing works or not. Okay, so what can we think about the future? What's coming up? Bitbucket, there's already a pull request open so that we will support Bitbucket Cloud. Azure DevOps is another possibility that we could look into the future. Additional package managers, so the Arch Linux prefers to use the users repository. So that's something that we could look like. SPAC is very popular in research for whatever reason. That also targets Linux, so we could do that as well. We could build RPMs and Debian packages without bundling a Java runtime. so without using JPackage. And that will also work not just for Java, but for any other language. There is already support for Rust, but we wanted to make it a bit better. And what do I mean by that? If I go into the JRealizer website, which is this is the landing page, and you go into Get Started, click on Examples. Let's make it a bit bigger. Miscellaneous. This is a bunch of hello worlds written in different languages. So how many do we have them? There's Ballerina that works on the JVM, C++, Crystal, which is a version of like a what is this? Static typed Ruby, C#, Elixir, Haskell, Perl, Rust, Swift, and Sig. So at the very least, we have examples for 11, because obviously we're counting Java as well. You want to release a Java binary, single jar, JLink, native package, or native GraalVM, just click on that link, and that will let you go into, well, show you a repository that contains the minimum setup for this to work. If you want to release an early access release, or if you want to release a final release. So the same configuration that you see here will work for both modes. And that's exactly the same thing that we have for JRealizer. So JRealizer has its own JRealizer file here, which is pretty much like a kitchen sink example, because it has a lot of options, because we release to many places. And that this single configuration file, exactly the same, can be used to publish to early access or to a production release. And the only difference is the version number. And if you were to look into, let's look into the code here, the workflows, the early access workflow, just regular YAML. At some point, it builds JLink images and JPackage installers, native image installers with GraalVM, and performs the release. And notice that release is just check out, grab all the artifacts that I need to release, and then invoke the release action with certain parameters. Whereas releasing requires setting the version number as an input, because I know exactly which version I want to do a commit, then do the same thing, JLink, JPackage, native image, collect all the artifacts, and that's it. Release with more properties. Why? More secrets? Because now I want to announce to Twitter and Mastodon and publish to Nexus and do stuff. I also announce to Open Collective and publish to SDK Man as well. So it's just a matter of configuring the secrets. So that is how you could do more stuff with one tool by automating away all those manual steps that may be happening right now. The tool is flexible enough so that you can use as little or as much of its features as needed. You don't have to use everything, just as much as you require. Here are some URLs for the project. So the website, where the project is hosted. We have an Open Collective in case that you want to become a sponsor. We have a Twitter account, and we have a Mastodon account as well. So where we post announcements or things that are happening on the project. Everything that we have seen so far is open source. If you have not contributed to open source before, let me tell you, it's very simple. You find a problem or something that is happening with this project or any other open source library or project that you use in your daily work, file a ticket. That's everything that you have to do. Just tell the person or the team at the other side of the wire that you're using the project and you find something that is not working correctly. There maybe is a bug, or maybe there's a missing feature or something that they could do, but just engage in a conversation. You don't have to send a test case. You don't have to send code. You don't have to sign a CLA for this to work. Just engage in a conversation. That's plenty of help to us open source developers. It may be in the time later you will see, oh, maybe I can contribute to this fix, or maybe I want to contribute this feature, and who knows where these things will take. When I started doing open source, I was living back in Mexico, my hometown, and now I'm here in front of you in Cologne after living 13 years in Switzerland, just because of open source. You never know where open source is going to take you. We are accepting a lot of kind of contributions to JRelease. So we have fixes, we have features that are marked as good first issues. We have translations to many of the resources that we have. We have a German translation, by the way, which requires a little bit of TLC. It has not been recently updated. Or if you want to contribute yet another translation, that would be awesome as well. So with this, I thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I also have JRelease stickers, limited edition. So, any questions? Okay, a few. We test everything when we create a new integration. We do things at the beginning manually, and if it's worth it for JRelease itself, we add that integration directly. So all the package managers that you saw, the listed, we also use them for JRelease itself, every single one of them. It's only a handful of the announcement or the announcements that we use for JRelease, but we know that other projects have tested those as well. So JRelease uses, I think, 4 announcements at the time, but we could do more. And we rely on feedback from consumers or potential users that say, hey, I'm using Mattermost at my company. Could you support this? And I said, yeah, sure, we can. Just let's look at the terms of APIs and integrations, and we make something work. And that's how most of the features have been added to the project. Because someone said, nice, but I'm missing this. Could something like this be done? And we did it. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yes. It will be possible. Right now, it takes the commit messages as is, and as a matter of fact, there is one option over there called that I didn't show exactly, which is called search and replaces, where you can use regular expressions to replace certain tokens, or it could be a whole sentence if you want to. But some people will prefer to, regardless of the type of messages that you write in the commit, you want to have something like, okay, these 5 commit messages are related to one feature, and I want to describe this feature in a certain way that is more user-friendly. In the future, the tool will give you the option to group together or identify these commit messages in such a way that you can rewrite in the changelog, but not in the Git history, because that thing is read-only. We don't want, unless you do a Git force or whatever. Don't do that, or unless you really need to. So just the release messages will be reformatted to accommodate your needs. Yeah. There was another question over here. Yes. So where is JRelease? It's here. So who is behind this project? And this is not just my own hobby project, pet project. And if I get hit by the boss, something is going to happen. Well, we have listed right now 61 contributors, and we have this thing here. These are everyone that has contributed something to our project. I am at the time the most active one. but there are other people that have access to all the tools to continue with the project in case that something were to happen to me. Yes? So the question is, I have a plan to integrate it with Git flow. Well, not really, not right now. The point is that your project, when it's ready to do a release, you simply do boom release and you're done. Git flow will require knowing about the conventions for the branches. One thing that JReleaser can do that might be related is that you can configure what is the pull branch versus what is the push branch. By default, it's usually the same. But if you want to pull from something and then push to something else, you can do it. You can tell JReleaser to do the tag, or the tag can come from external tools, or Maven could tag it, or someone else. So it pretty much depends on your actual development process or release process. So the idea is that the tool will adapt to what you have versus the other way around, which is forcing you to adapt your process in order to use the tool. So Git flow is important, and it doesn't support what you need to do in order to do release. Then what I would suggest is to go into our discussion tab and then just open a topic and say, hey, what about Git flow? What about this? And let's figure it out. So the question is, if the Maven plugin supports the bumping the versioning of the project, and no, it does not. Why? Because Maven versions plugin know how to do it, and the version of the project is one of the given inputs. If we were to not have that version, we could compute it in a way, but that makes things messy. Once we know which version you have released, we could certainly auto bump the version number if we know what kind of versioning scheme you're using. Because one of the things that this tool does is support more than one versioning scheme. At least I think it supports like 5 of them. Semantic versioning is the most common one, but we also have Calvert, which is calendar version, or Chrome version, which is timing. The Java runtime and Java module, which are very similar but not exactly the same as semantic versioning or any custom version. So given these versioning schemes, it may be difficult to just provide something that works for all of them to the auto bumping. So for now, we don't have a concrete solution for it. We may have it in the future. There was another question over there. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'll fix that. Well, thanks so much. Well, thank you for being a wonderful audience, and I hope that you continue enjoying JCON. And don't forget to seek us.